They said a tattoo was just ink on skin, but for him, it was a memory burned into the soul. The single dad sat quietly at the edge of the Delta Force training ground, waiting for his turn, while the younger recruits chuckled and pointed at the faded lines of an eagle etched on his arm. They laughed not because it was ugly, but because it looked old, worn, like the man himself. "That's the best you could get." One of the young operators smirked. "Looks like something out of the 70s. The single dad didn't answer. He didn't tell them that the tattoo wasn't just a design, it was a promise, a piece of his past he carried every day, something tied to blood, sacrifice, and a friend who never came home. He just clenched his fist, lifted his eyes, and kept silent, even as they laughed. He wasn't supposed to be here, not anymore. He'd already served his years, already carried the weight of combat scars and sleepless nights. Life had dragged him down harder than any battlefield, his wife leaving, the endless bills, the nights when he sat in silence so his son wouldn't hear him cry. The military was supposed to be behind him, but when his son, barely 12 years old, looked him in the eye one night and asked, "Dad, do you ever regret who you are?" he knew he couldn't quit on himself. He had to prove that broken men could still rise. That's how he found himself back here, in the brutal Delta Force program, training alongside warriors half his age. Every morning was war again. Not against bullets, but against exhaustion, aching joints, and the fear that he was too far gone to keep up. He carried bruises like medals, his knees cracked with every sprint, but he refused to fall behind. Still, no matter how much he endured, the laughs followed him, the tattoo, the age, the single dad jokes. They didn't know he'd once carried a brother bleeding through the sand, whispering the words the tattoo represented, "Promise me you'll keep going, no matter what." Then came the day everything changed. A surprise inspection. The recruits stood in formation, sweat dripping, hearts pounding as the general himself walked in. His reputation was legendary, his presence sharp as steel. He walked down the line, inspecting, saying nothing. Then his eyes landed on the single dad. For a moment, silence. Then the general's gaze dropped to the man's arm. The old eagle tattoo. Something shifted in his expression. The recruits held their breath, expecting mockery again. But instead, the general slowly pulled up his sleeve. And there it was, the same eagle, scarred and faded, inked on his arm too. The air froze. No one laughed now. The general stepped closer, his voice low but carrying weight that silenced every whisper. "Where did you get this?" he asked. The single dad's throat tightened. He told him, about the desert, the ambush, the friend he lost, the words spoken in dying breath. The general's jaw clenched, and then his voice cracked, not with weakness but with memory. "I knew that man. We all did." The recruits shifted uncomfortably, realizing the tattoo wasn't a joke, but a brotherhood mark, a symbol shared by warriors who had seen the worst and refused to bow. From that day, everything changed. The laughter stopped. Respect grew where mockery once stood. The single dad wasn't just another older recruit anymore, he became proof that resilience doesn't fade with age. He became the man who carried not just his own battles, but the weight of those who never made it home. When training grew harsh and the younger men faltered, it was him they looked to, the man who rose every morning after working nights to feed his son, the man who carried scars but never surrendered. He taught them that strength wasn't about who lifted the heaviest weights, but who carried the heaviest burdens and still stood tall. One night, after a grueling day, the younger recruits gathered around him. They asked about his tattoo, about his story, about the promise he carried. For the first time, he shared it fully. He spoke of his son, his struggles, the nights when he thought about quitting life altogether but didn't, because quitting would betray the memory of his brother in arms. He reminded them that one day, when the laughter fades, when the uniforms are folded for the last time, all they'll have left is the memory of what they stood for. That was what the tattoo meant. That was why he never covered it, no matter how much people mocked. By the time graduation day arrived, the man stood in formation not as the weakest, not as the oldest, but as the heartbeat of the group. When the general pinned the badge on him, he whispered just loud enough, "You've kept your promise. And today, you've made us all proud." His son, standing at the back of the crowd, had tears streaming down his face. He wasn't just watching his dad get honored. He was watching proof that even broken men can rise, that even in loneliness and hardship, strength can be reborn. And as the father walked off the stage, his son ran to him, hugging him with all his strength. The man whispered, "Never be ashamed of who you are, son. These scars, these struggles, they make us who we are. And they remind us to never stop fighting." So if you're listening right now, maybe you've been laughed at, maybe you've been underestimated, maybe you've been told you're too old, too weak, too broken. But remember this story. Ink on skin fades, but the meaning you carry never does. Don't quit. Don't give in. And if this story touched your heart, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes, the difference between quitting and carrying on is knowing you're not alone.